just let me know. It's been quite a morning, so just let me know if I'm live. Hello. Oh my gosh. Facebook loves to change things up, so I'm really sorry that I'm starting late this morning. I'm just grateful that I'm able to start and that I've got it working, I think. Janet just maybe sent me a WhatsApp that you can hear me and that I'm coming through loud and clear. It's so interesting. This morning we were dancing resilience again in Nia. And it's just so apt in terms of how life throws us these curveballs, and we can either roll with them, respond with them, stay calm, breathe, and become more flexible. So thank you to all of you that are here this morning and that have been patient. I am going to be talking about cravings, especially when you are in early sobriety. You might be feeling, I often hear people saying to me, the wine witch got me, I don't know. It's like something just takes over, this craving, this urge, and I've got no control, and I just drink, and I try and resist it, and I just keep having these cravings. It's like they innate, they are involuntary. I don't know what to do about them. So I want to talk to you really about that, because our cravings are really just a powerful desire for something. And it's not innate. It's not something that we're just born with. We actually create desire. We create desire with our thoughts and with our repetitive habits, patterns of behavior will create our behavior and will also create our desire. So I want to first of all just go back a little bit into, okay, so how do we create our habituated behaviors, and how do our behaviors become habituated? And really that's to understand that we often create a new skill with our prefrontal cortex. And then to conserve energy, once we've learned the skill, it automates it and puts it into our middle brain, or our hippocampus, where our memory and reward system is stored in our brain, so that we don't have to think about it. So you can think about it in terms of, imagine my phone that gets manufactured. There's a blueprint for it. There's a lot of thought and energy that goes into designing the phone, and then once it is it's the final product, it's the one that works, if the prototype is being created, then it's very easy to manufacture 100 exact phones by just following the blueprint. And that's very much how our brain behaves and how our brain learns to habituate behaviors, which is why you will find yourself always taking the same route to work, and sometimes you'll get to work and you won't even realize how you got there. Or you will you automatically brush your teeth, you don't think about it. Learning a new language, we learn a new language by a lot of repetition. We learn new behaviors by creating the same thought and emotion and action over and over and over and over again, and then, until it becomes repetitive, and then it becomes almost involuntary. For example, when somebody around me speaks in German to me and asks me a question in German, like in Germany, I automatically respond in German because I know the language. I learned it many times. I learned it when I was much younger, but it's innate. It's stored in my hippocampus. So when the situation arises, I automatically speak German. I don't think about it. And so let's look at understanding that and then say, okay, so then how have I created desire? And how have I created specifically desire for alcohol? So when we're learning a new behavior, if there's a reward attached to it, it's just so much faster, so much more intense. So when we learn, when we drink, and we say to ourselves, oh, that was good, I want to drink, we create the desire with the thought. Then the action is to drink, and then the reward is, it's a reward that felt good. And differently with things like with alcohol or with sugar. If you imagine you're taking a teaspoon of sugar, it becomes so much, the brain will have a preference for it, because taking a teaspoon of sugar is such a concentrated dopamine rush that it just floods the brain with dopamine and much quicker than, for example, an apple or a peach would. So the brain starts thinking, oh, that teaspoon of sugar will give me the energy quicker than a peach or an apple. And with alcohol, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. So what we've done is we've concentrated a fruit and fermented it and created alcohol from it, so that it gives a very concentrated flood of dopamine when we drink it, which is why we often initially feel so good. And then what the brain does is it starts to down-regulate, because now it's so flooded with dopamine, it's too much, so it down-regulates it. But the desire for it doesn't get down-regulated, so we wanted more, and we wanted more, and we needed more, and we needed more. And that's how the addiction of alcohol gets created. But we deal with that in depth on our workshop. So if you really want to understand more about how we create our habituated patterns, how alcohol becomes that habituated pattern, how the craving for it becomes an addiction, come to our workshop, because there you really will get the in-depth knowledge about it. Because today I want to really just cover, okay, so you've got this desire for it, what do you do about it, and how do you manage it? And the first thing I wanted to just let you know, there's nothing wrong with your brain, there's nothing wrong with you. Your brain is designed to habituate, it's designed to create desire. We can also look at it in another way, in terms of just the difference of back in the day when all we we needed the desire to, and the motivation to go and get food to eat to survive. We needed to have sex to perpetuate our race. So we needed to keep warm to be safe. We needed to have connection and be part of a tribe, to not be isolated. So all of those habituated desires are normal, are natural, are part of our human condition. However, today, now we've concentrated our dopamine and our reward system to such a degree that it's no longer just little releases of dopamine, like a little bit of pleasure when I eat something, or the desire of, for example, when I'm hungry, when I haven't eaten for a while, I think, oh, I need to eat. There's a desire. That's a craving. But it's a craving that is not that intense that it's like, I have to have it or I'm going to die. So understand that you have created your desire for alcohol, therefore you can uncreate it. That is like what I found very powerful when I went on this journey, when I learned that I was not at the effect of my brain, that I could actually learn how to uncondition it. And one of the ways that I learned how to uncondition my desire for alcohol, because all I ever wanted was to have absolutely no preference for it. I didn't want to have a desire for alcohol. And I wanted to just be able to leave it. I wanted to be able to see it and have no response to it. It just don't want it. And the way that I learned to uncondition the desire and not to want it anymore was by following the example of Pavlov and his dogs. That just really explained it all to me very well. You know, if you don't know the story, I'm sure a lot of you have heard about Pavlov and his dogs. He was this scientist who observed that his dogs would start to drool. Every time they were going to be fed, the minute they already heard the steps, he noticed they would drool, and then they would get the meat or the food. And then he started to play around with that and thinking, this is like really interesting. So he would start by ringing a bell. Every time he would ring the bell before he would give the food, the dog started to drool when he was ringing the bell. And then eventually they would ring the bell and not give the food, ring the bell and not give the food. And eventually the dogs would stop drooling. Even when they rang the bell and gave the food, they would not drool anymore. And that's also how they train animals these days. So we are very much the same in that point, that we've now created this habituated drool, this habituated desire for the alcohol. So how do we unlearn it? We have to do the same thing that Pavlov did with his dogs. We have to have an unanswered drool. So every time we have a craving, we have to not answer it. When the bell rings, when we have a trigger and we want a drink, we don't answer it. We actually allow it. And how do we do that? So how do we get into allowing and being with our emotions? An urge or a craving is really just a very strong, or a strong desire, a strong emotion for something. How do we allow it? How do we get into acceptance? And how do we unlearn it so we no longer have that desire for alcohol? Okay, so one of the skills that I learned in life coaching was to become the watcher. When we become the watcher, we are able to observe ourselves thinking and feeling and acting. So we start by looking at our life in terms of what are our actions. We get curious. What are our actions? What are the results that we're having in our life? What are our thoughts? How are we feeling? So becoming the watcher and watching yourself think and feel in terms of alcohol, I always encourage my clients to just observe what they're thinking about alcohol. What are their thoughts like, I want to drink, it gives me relief, it's celebratory, I can go and have fun when I drink. All of those thoughts that create the desire for alcohol, just get them out, write them, observe when you have those thoughts, how are you feeling, and then observe the thoughts that you have that I don't want to drink anymore. When I start to drink, I can't seem to stop. It's starting to really affect my life. So when I'm looking at alcohol, how is it affecting my life? What is it actually doing in my life? We observe ourselves in our life and the habituated patterns. And we observe whether we start judging ourselves or whether we get curious. So we always encourage you to get curious, because when we judge ourselves, judgments make us feel shame and guilt, and those feelings tend to drive the action again to want to drink more. But when we get curious, and it's a skill that we need to learn. We need to become aware of how are we thinking, how are we feeling, how are we acting. And one of the best ways to, when we set a goal to make it happen, is to make it happen from curiosity, from the love lens versus the judgment lens. And I often speak about that. So become the watcher and start practicing to be the watcher. And the best way to practice being the watcher is to start doing it when you're at a place of peace. For example, in the morning when you're having your cup of coffee, drink your cup of coffee and be present with it, or your cup of tea. Notice how it makes you feel. Notice the thoughts that you have about your coffee, and just journal gently around it. And then when you start feeling triggered, you start saying, okay, that's an uncomfortable feeling. What is happening right now? And write about it. Observe it. When we are able to observe ourselves, when we become the watcher, it's almost like we are giving ourselves some relief, because we're no longer in it. We are able to look at ourselves from above, and we're able to go down and say, okay, let me just observe myself. Let me observe myself having this absolute craving to drink. Let me just observe it. What am I thinking? What does it actually feel like? How do I allow it? And for me, one of the best ways to manage my urges was, there are three ways I can be with them. The first one is I can reward the urge. I can choose to drink, and then I just perpetuate the behavior. and the desire for the alcohol. The second one is I can resist it. And when I go into resistance, it's like a beach ball that I'm trying to suppress, and I'm suppressing it, and I'm suppressing it, and I'm suppressing it, and eventually it bursts, and then I drink. Or I can allow it. I can allow that desire, that drool for the alcohol. And when I allow it, and how I allow it is I'm just with it. I become present with it. It's almost like a meditation where I describe it. How would I describe this uncomfortableness, this desire, this drool to somebody like an alien, somebody from another planet that arrives and says, what is this drool? Explain it to me. So you write it and you describe it. You describe what does it feel like? Where is it sitting in my body? And it's amazing when you can also just allow it from a place of peace. So often when we are in resistance, we want it to go away. We kind of build up on it. It builds and it builds. And our thoughts are, I can't have it, and it builds and it builds. However, when we just allow it and we get into a space of peace, almost like imagine yourself in a peace bubble, in this bubble where you're safe and all you're having is this bit of an uncomfortable feeling in your body. You observe it, you feel it, you allow it, and it dissipates. It's amazing. It's almost like a teacher. And you need to, it's what my coach at the time told me was, allow 100 urges and you will have unconditioned or deconditioned your brain. You will have deconditioned the drool. So it's so interesting that at the time I was thinking, well, when I went to AA, they said to me, first of all, avoid your triggers. So you don't want to ever put yourself in a situation where you're going to be triggered. And here my coach was saying to me, put yourself into situations where you're triggered. Allow yourself to be triggered. Allow the craving, allow the desire, and then don't answer it. And so if we look at it in terms of the think, feel, act, and reward cycle, you go to a bar, you go to a party. The thought is, I want to drink. The action is, you don't drink. So first of all, you're thinking, I want to drink. You feel the urge, you feel the drool, and then you decide, I'm not going to drink. I'm going to drink something else instead. So I always say, always have another action that you're going to take, another drink you're going to drink. Whether it's a non-alcoholic AF beer, or it's a kombucha, or it's a lime and soda, or it's a tonic water. Have your go-to drink that you're going to order instead, and drink that. So then you have rewarded yourself with something else other than the alcohol. You are starting to decondition that when I go to a bar or I find myself in this situation, I want to have a drink, and therefore I'm going to have a drink, and I'm going to drink alcohol, and I'm just going to be triggered. I can't do anything about it. There's this desire that comes over me. No, you allow it, and then you don't reward it. You drink something else. And if you can do this 100 times, I promise you, I don't even know how long it took me eventually, because I just suddenly one day realized I have absolutely no desire for it. But I would even practice it, like in situations. I would imagine situations where I would really want to drink, like on my way home from work, feeling very stressed, and I would think, imagine how I would go and buy a bottle of wine and come home and drink it. And then I would imagine a scenario where I would do the same, and I would come home and I wouldn't drink. I would drink something else instead. But I would first of all feel the urge, feel the desire, and then not allow it. And a very fun way to do this is, I know we have the Lucy's calendar where we put stars every day that we don't drink. But it can also just be, I want you to put the star and before you put the star, I want you to have allowed yourself to have the urge to drink and not have responded to it. Have the wine which come, feel it, not allow it. Another way to do it is to have a beautiful jar. I know that there's a page called Coins in a Jar, or so where every time you don't drink and you allow yourself to have the urge, you can put a beautiful shiny coin into a jar and see it bubbling. And when you've got 100 1 Rand coins or 5 Rand coins, it's a really good feeling. Or beautiful stones. Have fun with it. So challenge yourself and just allow it, and come from the point of, I'm doing this because I want to be in control of my brain. I am the watcher. I'm the observer. I don't have to be at the effect of my brain. I'm the conductor here, and I can see when I'm having a craving, and when the craving is a craving that I want to have unanswered, I can choose not to answer it. And that, in a nutshell, my friends, is how you decondition a desire, a craving. Let me know if any of you have tried that. What are pop your questions here in the comment box. You might be saying to me, oh, I don't know if I can do that. Put myself, and then I want to also just let you know that it's a new skill that you're going to learn. It's a skill that also allows you to be with your emotions. So when you're able to be with your urge, you learn to be able to be with any emotion. Oh my gosh, my computer wants to restart. It is really a very interesting morning today. Sorry, where was I? Allowing emotions. It's the same skill. When you're feeling an uncomfortable emotion, sit with it. If you're feeling anger, frustration, become the watcher, allow it into your home like a professor to teach you. And it's so amazing that that's the best way that we get relief from ourselves when we're feeling dissatisfied, frustrated, angry. We allow it and we breathe into it, we release it. I'm so grateful. One of the reasons why I'm so grateful for this journey is that I learned the skill of becoming the watcher in my life. We have learned how to watch my emotions, how to be with them rather than being at the effect of them, learning how to respond rather than react. Because we need to recreate our emotional intelligence, and that's how we do it. So don't avoid your triggers. Engage with them. Invite them in. I love my triggers these days. So when I've made a decision, I'm not going to be eating sugar anymore. I'm not having coffee anymore. It's the same thing. I can use that same skill that I learned, how to allow for something that's uncomfortable. And remember, discomfort is the currency of growth. So go out there, face 100 urges, allow them, decondition your brain, and liberate yourself from this desire for alcohol. Let me see who's here, if I can see. Hi, Janet. Oh, thank you for being here. And Flick. Cravings on my side get punished by going for a walk, usually a long one. And when I walk, I think and lean in and allow the emotions. I do not try to deal with cravings, that space, room area that I normally drink. Okay. So I would still encourage you, Flick, to just be with that rule and then go for your walk. But first, just to allow it, to notice it. It's like a sleeping dragon. I sometimes say it's like learning how to ride our dragon, you know. It's a sleeping little dragon that comes up and says, oh, and then we just say, I see you, I feel you, and it just becomes like a little pussycat. And it's like a little friend, actually. And then go for your walk. And Natasha, you're doing so well with really listening to your wine witch and saying, and I read one of your WhatsApps that you now can listen to her and you can converse with her and tell her No, I'm not going to give in to you. I'm not going to have that drink. And you allow it, you have the feeling. And Flick's going to take the dragon on the walk. I love that. Yeah, so good to see you all here. Hi, Mon. Yeah, breath work have helped me through cravings, absolutely. So one of the ways when we allow it is just to breathe it, just to feel it. You know, it's so interesting how our brain seems to think we're going to die. It's like it's having an absolute tantrum. If I don't get that, we become like toddlers for our wine and for our alcohol. But we can release it. We can take away. We're not going to give a toddler a knife. So we can calm our toddler. We can go into our prefrontal cortex. We can call it our watcher, our mommy brain. However you want to call it. What do you call your inner sage or your prefrontal cortex, your watcher? Have you got a name for it? Let me know. And Cher says, I use urge surfing, ride with waves of the craving. Yes, and in the interview that Janet did with Dr. Stephen Neff, he actually also talks about that a craving you can see it like a huge big wave that comes at you. And now you've got a choice. You can surf that wave and be with that wave. Oh, and it's so liberating. Can you imagine that you're surfing this wave? And at first it's quite terrifying, and then you get the hang of it and you control it and you surf it out. Or you can dive underneath it, you know. But when you resist it and you try and stand up against it, it's going to crush you. So I love the urge surfing, Shares. Yes, surf your waves of craving. Be with it. It's just like surfing. Just imagine it like you're surfing this beautiful wave, this huge wave. And you are conquering that wave. You're riding it. Yeah. Be the scientist in your own life. And really, exactly, Janet. You know, when we allow the desire and we don't answer it, we get stronger. And we start creating a strong core and center. And we learn to trust ourselves. We learn that we are not at the effect of our brains. We are the directors, the conductors. And we can conduct and create a beautiful life. And it's so interesting that everything really hinges on how we think about things, that our thoughts create our feelings and then drive our actions. So when we can observe ourselves thinking as the observer, as the watcher, we can choose the thoughts that are going to create a beautiful alcohol-free life for us. So that's it from me this morning. It's so beautiful to always see you all here and share with you. And remember, there's nothing wrong with hard. Welcome, Kevin. Hi. I see that you are on your way, Kevin, and I hope that you found it helpful this morning to surf your urges, serve your cravings, allow them, become the watcher, and I will see you in 2 weeks' time. Lots of love. Have a beautiful day. Bye.